Everything I do comes from my heart. If I believe in something, I will go and do it. And I can't remember ever being any different from as far back being a child of 3 to throughout my life, even when I had nothing. I mean, there was a time when I slept in my car. I didn't have anything. Wherever it is in my life, I've always been somebody who believes you need to use your voice and your actions if you believe in something. I think I've had many failures, and some of what I do is because of the scars of my life that I've earned. Yeah. But it isn't only that. I was brought up in a household that was very much about, my father in particular started, ironically, a People's Progressive Party to get rid of a dictatorship. So I grew up in a very privileged home where we talked about politics. I would lie on the top of the stairs and smell the cigar smoke of Castro, whoever it was in the room, and listen to them debating about politics and social justice. And it always filled me with awe that you could change other people's lives by your actions. So I've always been surrounded by that idea that other people matter. Well, my father was setting up this party that was, my father very much believed in, I suppose he was a true Labour party would be from our point of view. And he believed that if there wasn't a just political system, then you needed to have a people's revolution. And that's what he basically set up with the party. And that's where, he would go to Dominica, Venezuela. He would talk to different people about what should be done in our country. Well, but people think I've come from nowhere and I sort of just suddenly landed in this place. But, I've spent 10 years, as you say, fighting what I see as the rip-offs and the conflicts of interest in the pensions investment industry. I've done the same. I've been very critical of the charity sector, which I can say has been, has not made me friends in any way. And I've done so as far back as, taking on the Ribena company when they launched Baby Ribena all the years ago to say that they had so much sugar. It was actually children, babies, new teeth were actually rotting. So wherever I've seen something that needs a fight, I've been there fighting it. When we applied for the hearing to go to court, and the administrative hearing, we didn't know on the 19th of July whether or not the courts would say there is a case to be heard. So that was the first hurdle. And it was a great shock to me that I was appointed the lead claimant, because there were a number of cases at that stage. But when we later saw the government skeleton a few months later, I had no doubt we would win for one simple reason. Their case was very highly political. Ours addressed a very black and white letter of the law. So on the letter of the law, we were very confident that we would win. It was whether or not the courts would be, if you like, lowercase political in addressing the question we were asking them. It wasn't actually about Brexit, and this is the thing that people don't really understand, and very few people have actually read the case. If the government had won, or allowed to use the royal prerogative, because we don't have a written constitution, the precedent would have been set that any Prime Minister in the future could bypass Parliament and take away people's rights. That's disability rights, employment rights, environmental safeguards, anything. They could have used the royal prerogative on the domestic plane. That would have fundamentally shaken our entire constitution. And that's why the case was so important. And I was shocked at how few parliamentarians actually understood that. The problem with referendum plebiscite is you have to have the time for people to find out the information to make an informed choice when they're voting. I don't people have that. If you go, to the very roots of democracy, is that the Greeks going back, they said you need time to vote, and that's true. You need time to find out the information. And in the world where we have fake news and people are choosing their media, they're choosing what they get from social media or online media, I don't think it would work. What I do believe that in the system of representative democracy, I don't think we have the right people in the system. There were two other gentlemen, who were also going to join me in the case. But when the backlash to the law firm and myself on that 19th of July, they chose not to join me in the case and dropped out. And I absolutely understand why. They're successful, high profile, they needed to protect their family, and I haven't got a problem with that at all.
So did you?
No, but I chose...
You were successful, high profile, well not high profile,
not,
but
in my sector, high profile possibly, yeah. But because I own my business, there are no external shareholders, I own it with my husband, I don't have the same, I don't have to answer it gives to shareholders or to my board or to a board, it gives me a real freedom. And because it's my money that I've earned, again, that gives me freedom. And both of those, I think people, if you get it, I mean, I consider myself a conscious capitalist. I believe that when you're successful, you should give back to the society that afforded your success and do it in a way that is actually beneficial. It's not that difficult to understand. Look at, you know, the philanthropists in Victorian times. It's exactly what they did. You know, they looked at society. You know, that's where the bar of soap came from, you know, the Lever brothers, because they wanted to help people combat disease and to make sure they had a healthier workforce. This is not something new. This is something that's happened for generations. I think we're going to a very dangerous place right now, because there is a shutting down of debate, of reasoning, and as we progress Brexit, we actually need people who are very creative and innovative in their thought process and their debating. We need great minds and hearts to ensure that we get the best outcome, and all of that appears to be shutting down. You know, it's my way or no way, it seems to be the message that we're getting, and that's incredibly dangerous for all of us. That's why one of the things I'm trying to say to people is you need to back candidates. Forget this idea that it's a foregone conclusion, this election. It's still about getting different voices with different opinions and who will stand up for what's best for Britain, which is why I've called my organisation, this new campaign, Best for Britain. It's about ensuring those different voices are strong voices and can have a sense of accountability, because otherwise it's just an echo chamber, and that really will damage us all. Democracy is about opposition. Unless you have a functioning opposition, you don't have a functioning democracy. And we do, and I've used this, and people sort of, you know, get very, say I'm being dramatic, but I say we are going to have an elected dictatorship, and that's actually what we're going to have. And I'm not saying that because I'm being dramatic, I'm saying that because I'm looking at what's happening. You know, the government in its white paper gave itself the powers to use something called the Henry VIII Clause. This is going back to hundreds of years when, you know, monarchs closed down and beheaded and got rid of any opposition.
Well, it's government by decree.
It is by executive order and decree. Yeah. That's where we're going back to. You know, the Hansard Society itself, an independent organisation, is very worried about this. And it's not just happening in dark rooms. The government, you know, they're being bold, they're saying it, and nobody's standing up and saying, well, actually, you can't do that. You can't give yourself those powers. They just go, okay, and rubber stamp everything. We are in a dire place right now. There is no opposition. And, you know, I shouldn't have had to do anything that I did. It should have been the opposition that did that. When the government said we were going to use a royal prerogative, it's the opposition that should have stood up and said, no. You can't do that. You are not above the law. You are not above parliamentary sovereignty. And all the people who were banging on the table about parliamentary sovereignty should have been the ones shouting even longer and saying, look, what about us? You can't just bypass us. I think after the election, we need to, the emotional ripples of Brexit are still there. We need to let some of that abate. Because in my view, you mentioned tribalism earlier. I think we need to move away from the Leave Remain, but the Remain camp, I think we're going to have to work harder, and we're going to have to hear and engage and respond to all those people who voted Leave and find out why they voted Leave and understand that cry, because I do think a large populace voted Leave because they wanted someone to listen to them. They were crying out. It was an emotional spasm, Brexit, and we've got to understand why that happened. And we've got to fix it. And those foundations that we need to fix are the big questions that I'm very angry that the government in this whole Brexit are ignoring. We're ignoring the NHS, we're ignoring the aging of our population, we're ignoring education, we're ignoring young people and the inequalities and the age gap. All the things that we should be addressing are actually just being pushed aside for this sort of crazy, fantastical place we think we'll be and this journey we're on. Two reasons why I wouldn't get into politics. One is, I believe if you put yourself forward as a politician, a minister, you should give 110% of your time to that job and to your constituents. I'm not in that place. I have too many other responsibilities. And secondly, I would not repeat what I was told I had to say. I just wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, take the party line and be whipped. It just wouldn't be for me. I think if I'm frightened that what will happen is that all opposition is being closed down, but all debate, not just opposition. You know, you can't just have one side of an argument. And I think what the convention and these conversations will help us do is to reach out and encounter different views and talk about where we are and talk about healing. Because I think Brexit really wounded our country. And the divides are there. And if we don't talk about it and we don't discuss it and we don't debate it, the wounds will just get deeper. And I can see that from letters, emails, calls, people who write me heartbreaking things about what's happening to them and their families, the way they're being treated, the Britain we're now living in. We have to put that all back together, and we can do that with our voice, by coming together, discussing. You know, our words and our voices can really change what's happening out there. Silence won't. Silence means that the bullies win.